I'm stepping outside the IBC realm and just thinking about people who are successful financially. More than likely, there is a missing component in their lives, and it is this right here. It is the relationship. So, one of the things that we have in our mission statement is trusting long-term relationships.
And I said, do you like the idea of spending all of your energy going to learn something new that you're not sure how it's going to go? Or do you like the idea of keeping it all in-house, creating the same flows of money with the people you already love and trust?
Can you just imagine going back to being 20 years old and your parents already had the family bank in place, which means all the money that you've spent your entire adult life is coming back to you one day? That is insane.
Welcome to the Cash Flow Legendz podcast with your hosts Nate, Brandon, and Brock. Remember, our insights are not direct financial advice, so consult with your financial team before making any decisions based on the topics discussed in this show.
All right, welcome to Cash Flow Legendz. We're excited to have you. Nate and I are thrilled to have our guest today. He is a dear friend of ours. He's been and still is a mentor of ours, and he lives and breathes what we teach about infinite banking, becoming your own banker, what Nelson Nash really was trying to do. He has imparted that wisdom on us from being mentored by Nelson. And I don't know if we could have a more exciting guest. So buckle up, because there's no telling the energy that might exude through this screen. So just be ready. And so, Nate, I know you have a kickoff question for our dear friend, Mike Everett. And then, as Mike said before we started recording, it don't take much to wind him up. And so he's about to get wound up, and then we'll see where he spins off at.
I have so many things that are coming to mind right now, but the first thing that popped in my head is Tombstone is one of my favorite movies. And Wyatt Earp, whenever he's going after the Cowboys, he says, "You tell him I'm coming and hell's coming with me." Well, Mike Everett's coming and fun is coming with him when he shows up. That's all I got to say. And Brandon, you hit it on the head. Like, as far as exciting, man, I'm trying. So Chris Bay was here. I would tell you both the same thing. I would say this to both of you, like, not diminishing any value from anyone else that's out there in the world that may ever show up on this show. But when it comes to special guests, you two guys are the most special guests that we will ever have.
That's awesome. I tell you, I wish Chris was here. I know his schedule just didn't work out, but I still go back to when we met, when you guys showed up in Lawrence, Kansas. It was just like, who are these two guys? And we hung out. Our stories were the same. Our thoughts were the same. And, just the relationship and how it started was just absolutely unbelievable. And of course, now this is what, 4 or 5 years later?
6 year. We just celebrated our 6-year anniversary.
Oh my gosh. See, I can't even remember what happened yesterday. So
I'm curious, and I'm going to ask Chris the same thing, because I know y'all have different perspectives. I would love to know what the conversation was like between you two when y'all decided that we were worth mentoring.
What we do is when Chris and I start to think about mentoring, when we start to think about bringing somebody alongside or us coming alongside them, we look at the heart, we look at integrity, and we look at honesty. You can usually tell within a 5-minute conversation if somebody is going to be worth your investment. And I say that openly and honestly about even when you're thinking about taking a new client on, because if there's a flow, golly, that's IBC language right there, a flow. If there's good flow, you probably have a fairly good idea that wandering down this pathway is going to be worth your time. And I'm telling you, doing this as long as I've done it now, I can usually tell within 3 to 5 minutes whether or not this would be worth the invested time.
So how many years, Mike? for those who don't know you, how many years have you been living this life? Give us a I mean, we know the story, but give us a quick overview of how you got here. Yep, there you go.
Right here, baby. You can see
Yep.
this book is beat up. In fact, I had to put some more tape on it. I hate breaking into another book. This is actually my third book, but I remember in 2005, I got this book sent to me by a gentleman in our area, and I
And
literally,
those who are listening, he is referring to Becoming Your Own Banker by Nelson Nash.
oh, there we go. Yeah, I ran into a guy at Applebee's in Lawrence, Kansas, and he says, "Hey, Mike, if I could show you a way or a strategy where you could be 100% out of debt in the next 5 years, or at least recover the entire cost of all the cars you buy, would you be interested?" I said, "Well, who wouldn't?" He said, "I got a book I want you to read." Perfect. This was Sunday after church. Wednesday, the mail comes. Big manila envelope. Out slides this book. On top of the book, there was a letter to tell you how to read the book. But underneath the letter, there was a bill for $22. I looked at Linda. I go, "You remember the book that he said he was going to send?" I said, "He sent a bill. He sent a bill." I looked at this thing and I said, "Man, this guy's got nerve." I literally took that bill and I just went like this. I tore this thing up and I just went over and stomped on the deal, threw it in the trash, and I thought, what the heck? So I took the book, I literally threw it over by my chair where I read. This is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. This thing somehow made it to the top of the heap of books that I got over there. And I thought, well, I told the guy I'd read it. I tell you what I'm going to do. The news ended at 10:30, and I started reading this book at 10:30 p.m. I finished my second reading at 1:45 a.m. Couldn't put it down. I went in and I woke my wife up out of the dead asleep. So there's two things you should never do. Never read the book after 9 o'clock at night, and don't wake your wife up. I'm telling you, these are cardinal sins in the IBC world. But I knew within the first reading that I was getting ready to change careers. Now, this would have been November-ish of 05. It took me another 4 weeks. It was after the first of the year in 06 when I finally was able to meet with this guy and actually get a real idea what this thing was all about. So in really technically 05, but 06 is when I started my first IBC dividend-paying whole life insurance policy. And I'm going to tell you what, I have been geared up. I mean, I couldn't quit my job fast enough to start this new journey. And you know how when you start a new journey, you guys experience the same thing. You kind of go, let's see here, what exactly have I done? And the rest is history. It has been a ball. It has been learning. It has been investing in myself, my career, my learning, my education, investing in people, investing in you guys. I mean, so there's a whole lot of things that go along with that. But I always ask people, regardless if it's in investing in a, a hobby or a golf game or your career, what do you want out of the thing? You're going to get out what you put in. Your marriage, what do you want out of this thing? You're going to get out what you put in. And so you got to start to think about, what are the priorities? What do you want to get out of this thing? And I can show you in just about every area of your life, just through the things that I learned from Nelson Nash, what it takes to become successful. But it doesn't come without trials. The trials, the tribulations, the struggles is what makes us better at what we do.
I want to tell a full circle story real quick. So in 2017, me and Brandon came across Becoming Your Own Banker by Nelson Nash. We read it and we're like, there's something to this. Well, let's go do some research and see what we can find. We come across this podcast called Life Success and Legacy. It was one of the first podcasts that we came across. And we start listening to this podcast, these two guys, Mike Everett and Chris Bay out of Kansas. And we're like, wow, like they're just so genuine in their conversation. They're so matter of fact. They're not there's no sales hype, but they're talking about the things that we've read about and we want to learn more about. So we send an email. Hey, two knuckleheads from Texas. We've read this book. We need to know what to do next. We've listened to y'all's podcast. Please help us. And so then eventually that starts the client process, which turns into the mentoring process. And in September of 2018, we got invited on y'all's podcast to share our story. And now we come full circle all the way back around. And now y'all are coming on our podcast. So there is no doubt in my mind that the okay, so let me just back up a little bit. When y'all started your podcast, when you tell your story about that, you were very reluctant to start a podcast, but that created a ripple effect that changed our lives. So now we're continuing on that ripple effect for other people.
Yeah. Well, once again, investment return, investment return, because here to whom much is given, much is required. So knowing full well that Chris and I did this for you guys, now the responsibility is on you to do it for the next number of people and over the next number of years. I mean, because I can't go back to 40 something. Can't be done. I'd love to. What I know now, my job, my life's mission now is to transfer that to a younger generation. And of course, it's so funny. I just had this conversation with this guy up in Nebraska. 10 years ago, I was a one-man show. Chris Bay was a client, but didn't have any inkling that he was getting ready to quit his career as an educator in the school system to come and do this full time. And so I remember when Chris called me and says, "Hey, I need to come out to your office and I need to discuss some stuff." I said, "Great." So I remember I had all of his policies, his information. I'd printed it all out. It was on my desk. He goes, "No, we're not going to talk about this stuff." He goes, I'm thinking about changing careers." I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "What are you thinking about doing?" He goes, "I want to come to work with you." I go, "Oh, that's a really bad idea," because I'm a rugged individualist. I like doing stuff all on my own. Don't need your help. Don't need anybody's help. So we got going, and about 3 to 5 months into our relationship, he says, "Hey, what do you think about building a business, an organization?" I go, "Dude, you start bringing people on board." And I said, "It is a glorified babysitting service." I said, "I have no desire at my age to be babysitting a bunch of adults." I said, "I have a hard enough time babysitting myself." And then now next thing you know, we actually have 6 people on our core team. We just added a new client coordinator to come alongside Shelly. And let me tell you, this thing's completely out of control. I can't stop it now. And I think it's a really great thing, because what it's done is, now keep in mind, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I'm learning that you can teach an old dog new tricks. I've had to learn how to really embrace the change that comes along with having a team, and realizing that, and I come back to this, to whom much is given, much is required. That means that I've had a number of people invest in me. Now I've got to invest in people, and it's not just new potential associate agents. It's building an organization. Now, I will tell you, unequivocally, it has everything to do with Chris Bay, because that is his thing, his unique ability. Yeah, I got no unique abilities except for these two lips.
Your unique ability is to go fast
Come on,
when it's something you want to do.
that's it. That's
Yep.
it.
Because I
Like
feel that.
like like moving mulch.
Yep.
I'm telling you what, man, I'm mulched out right now, but I got to get 5 more yards because I'm short.
Hey, so Mike, I got a question for you. So a lot of times, and you can probably relate to this when you started. Question: You knew Nelson personally.
I
We
did.
unfortunately did not get to meet Nelson personally, and Nate and I say this very genuinely. We did not know Nelson personally, but we come from about the highest stock of who knew Nelson that has, in a blessing, been shared with us. So, like a lot of times when you're talking to us or Chris is, or James Nethery or other guys who knew Nelson, it's it's a really cool thing to see how information goes down generationally the way it used to biblically through value based relationships. So if you were to, so let's say somebody's listening or watching for the first time and they're like, infinite banking, I'm familiar with Nelson Nash, but I don't really know a whole lot about it. And you were going back and having a conversation with yourself in your 20s or 30s or when you were starting life, knowing all the things you know now with what Nelson taught you, what you've taught us, what you keep learning, what would you tell yourself? What kind of conversation would you have with yourself?
Number one, I would become more of a reader, researcher, educated, because I'm going to tell you, I skated through college. Long, that's a story in itself. But yet, I, I remember when this book came into my being, and I said, I literally got 3 pages into this, and I said, man, this is some interesting stuff. So if I had to go back and do this all over again, I don't care if I was 18, 25, 35. I would tell somebody, number one, become a researcher, become educated yourself. But number two, find somebody, a team that can come alongside you and coach you, educate you, to be able to explain things in a deeper, more meaningful way of how it is going to impact your financial journey. Now, granted, this is called the infinite banking concept. It's about dividend paying whole life insurance. It's about being efficient with cash flow. It's about understanding how money really works, right? Take all of that out of the picture. You've got to have somebody that you're going to be able to trust, and a team that's going to have integrity to be able to help you navigate the path that this is going to take you on. And so I say this in my webinars all the time. Everything we got taught about money and banking is based on lies and deception. Our job as infinite banking practitioners is to uncover the lies, to turn over all of the stones and say, okay, how is this happening now? Why is this different? But yet it's not different. It's just a matter of how you think. And if you can think differently, even if you just need a starting point, if we're starting a fire, we've got to have a match just to get the fire started. Where everything else happens is through communication, through reading, through education, through webinars, through seminars, through masterminds. You've got to be willing to do all of those things. Now, my younger self would have thought that is all garbage. Why? Because we as guys, and for the ladies listening, just bear with me for a second. We were taught to pull up our bootstraps. We were taught to pull up our own drawers. I can do this. I don't need any help. I'm telling you, we need help.
Garrett Gunderson, I've heard him say, wealth comes from conversation. And that's conversation that we have with ourselves, and that's conversation we have with other people. And so if
That's
we're
it.
not having those conversations, we're going to miss out on so much.
Mike, you probably heard Nelson say this often. And one of the things that I heard you guys say, or I read that he said that you lived out, that I got to see and get to see, and you're alluding to it with being a reader and having conversations. He uses the word ruminate. And
Ruminate.
I love that word. And I think David tells the story, Chris may, you may, I don't remember who it was, about anytime you'd walk into Nelson's office at his house, he was always going through something new, reading something new, had an article out, had a book out. This is well into his 80s.
I used to call Nelson once a week, and literally, and you know how much I like to talk, by the way, but stop laughing. And so I would literally call Nelson and I would ask him a question, and then I would shut up, and he would talk for 20, 30 minutes. You talk about ruminating. He would be able to share a story, and the story would go full circle, and then the whole point to the story was in the last sentence. And it was amazing how when you see these things and you get to hear them and you get to participate in them, it creates meaning. It creates that relationship that we all desire. You know, you even take these super ultra successful guys, and I'm stepping outside the IBC realm and just thinking about people who are successful financially. More than likely, there is a missing component in their lives, and it is this right here. It is the relationship. So, you know, one of the things that we have in our mission statement is trusting long-term relationships. You know, if you've got somebody coming to the table that's going to put $5 or $10 or $50,000 a year into a life insurance policy, there better be a relationship, but there better be some trust. And that's what we do. That's what you do. You create that trusting relationship that supersedes anything that they're going to do in IBC, because you have massive different conversations that revolve not just around money. It's life, it's family, it's stuff that's going on.
We had someone, a colleague, who was sort of observing our business model and kind of how we were doing things. And his observation was, y'all have an incredible ability to build trust very quickly with people. And me and Brandon just said, man, that comes from Mike and Chris. Like, I mean, that's 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 the way we were taught.
You know, it's just being real with people. You know when somebody's playing a game with you. You know when you're being sold. You can feel it. You know it. It's happening. And you know, I told Chris when we started doing these podcasts, I said, Chris, we just got to be ourselves. We literally have to be ourselves, because this is what people want to identify with. Whereas, you know, this, you've listened to podcasts, you've read blogs, and you kind of go, dude, is that guy selling me something? And then you go, ooh, get that off of me. I don't want none of that.
That reminds me, the greatest connections that I've had with people that I would consider successful is when they've shared their failures with me. Man, when we're vulnerable, we remind other people that we're not Superman. We're not superheroes. We don't have it all figured out. Like we do things the same way they do. But we've just been fortunate enough to have been taught some really great information. And now we have the gift to share that knowledge with other people. And in gift and responsibility, because once you know it, it's kind of like our faith. Once we know what salvation is and we know the love of Jesus, you can't keep
Give it
that to
away.
yourself.
That's
That's
it.
right. So it reminds me when we decided to fly to Kansas to see you guys, and
Yeah.
you're probably like, who are these two yahoos that are coming up here from Texas? In Texas and Kansas, it got some similarities. So there's probably some unknown tension going on there of like, which state's more important and all this. And it was a big step for me for sure, because I was completely coming into a new version of myself and who I thought I was going to be. And it was very uncomfortable. So you said something earlier, Nate just alluded to it. Being genuine in who we are has to be at the foundation. So I sit down with Mike and we start talking. Nate starts talking with Chris. And in less than 5 minutes of conversation, it is very clear to me, and I won't go into detail why, It's very clear to me that Mike and I were supposed to be sitting beside each other at a table talking about life and being vulnerable about that because of things he's experienced that I was just beginning to experience. And that is only and only the thing missing for most people is a relationship with Jesus Christ. And Nate and I and Brock, who is also on here with us often, are we feel like this is a platform to share the only real thing that matters. Everything else is just secondary. And so that's where the relationships come in. That's where the genuine accountability comes in. And I'm not going to tell the whole story, but I want everybody listening to hear this. When you begin to invest in yourself, it's the greatest investment you can ever make. When you begin to read, get yourself in rooms who know things more than you do, ask tough questions. Why do I feel this way? Why is this happening? You have to open yourself up to accountability, and it has to be with people you trust. So there was a moment in our early journey where Mike called us to the carpet, rightfully so, because we had misstepped in something that we could have handled way better and gotten the same result. If we're around somebody that just tells us what we want to hear and tickles our ear, guess what happens next? We probably do it again. And so that responsibility is so vital when we have a message worth sharing. Obviously, Jesus' love for us is number one, but everybody has money that flows through their life to try to create the life they want. And that's where
I'm
the
gonna
next accountability
I'm
comes.
gonna add something to that though. From both sides, I believe that we had an openness to be able to share and pouring into each other's lives. But yet, in the midst of all of that, you think about this in relationships, and whether it be a marriage relationship, a work relationship, or even a mentor relationship. If you can't be honest with people, you know what is there left? And I shared that with you. We talked about it, and it was done. I tell everybody, I said, you think about what drives most of us. It's fear and just the want to be significant. And I'm telling you, if you can get both of those things outside and realize that our significance only comes from one thing, and you've talked about it, it's a personal relationship with Christ. And I'm going to tell you what, I love IBC, but I don't love IBC more than I love Jesus. And once you start to get things in perspective, and I really believe wholeheartedly that that has been the reason why success has found me. It's only because of Christ. Because without Christ, I'm not sitting here on a podcast on. Is this the 8th of May? I'm not on a podcast with a couple of guys from Texas, hanging out, loving life.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you learn as you really start to gain more and more confidence about who you are in Christ and in business is eventually you get to the point where you're not worried about pushing people away. You're worried about finding the right people.
Boy, howdy, that's it. That is it. Yeah.
So, all right, Mike, you do not look your age. You do not have energy levels of people that are typically your age. Your energy level is
I'm a little
off the
wound
chart.
up.
All
Yeah, a
right.
little wound up.
So one of the things I always love about interacting with you and Chris is you have years of experience that we don't have. And often in Nate and I's conversation, people that are in their 50s or 60s or even 70s say this thing when they're learning about this. Well, this is probably good for my kids or my grandkids, but I'm probably well past that. Mike, give me your experiences with your conversations with your life, with your family on why that is so not true.
Well, we have when we do our webinars and when we do our boot camps, and we then have the next step, which was when we have our dream conversations for older clients. They go, I'm probably too old for this, aren't I? And I go, well, my next question is, we have 18-year-olds doing this and we have 80-year-olds doing this. I said, if you're somewhere in between there, probably going to work out just fine. So if you think about the older generation, and now I would be considered the older generation, what is it that they have that the younger generation doesn't have? Moolah, straight up cash. So the great thing about it is, as you are, and you guys are in the throes of this, you're raising your kids. Where is all your money going? It's going to your kids. I mean, you got young men growing up and they're eating you out of house and home. You got little girls who are starting to get hair products and makeup, and they got to have the right clothes. That you ain't got any money. But let me tell you what you get when they move out. You get a raise. You got more money than you know what to do with. I mean, when my daughter moved out, I got a $1,500 a month raise, just like that. If you need numbers, that's $18,000 a year.
I have 3 teenagers in my house right now. I feel this so much, and one of them in college.
So here's the crazy thing. One of the things that we tell to the older clients is, you could create your own system to where you're going to finance your kids' lives. What is it that they're going to do? Oh, are they going to buy cars? Are they going to go to college? Are they going to get married? Are they going to buy a house? Let's see. Have you done all those things? Guess what? Your kids are going to do all of those things. So it's a matter of taking the family circle. I'm teaching right now for the people who are listening. The family circle. How big do you want your family circle to be? Well, I want mine to be great big. Mine's going to be really big when I die, by the way. So the great thing about it is, as you are pouring those dollars into IBC, the dividend-paying whole life insurance, you're actually funneling those dollars back out to the kids. And then principle number 3 comes in play right like that. What is it? It's don't steal from your system. So if you loan money out to your kids for cars and marriages and mortgages, what should they do? Make payments back to the system, because eventually, are they going to get the bucket? Yeah, it's called teaching your kids responsibility. And so once that responsibility, and Nate, you made mention of that early. Once we've been given that responsibility, what do? We give it away. IBC, responsibility, mentoring is all a gift, and they are not our gifts. Give it away.
I don't want to make the older people listening feel bad, but can you just imagine going back to being 20 years old and your parents already had the family bank in place, which means all the money that you've spent your entire adult life is coming back to you one day? That is insane. So if you're young right now, start early. Start with your system so that one day your kids are going to have that family bank established for themselves.
We early on, I remember and you've done this too. We would run illustrations, and I would always think 20 years down the road because of the long-term thinking. So I'm gonna go to an illustration in the book here. It's in the back of the book. It's the one where you were putting $2,000 a year into a policy. I probably can't find it right now. What if I'm insurable? Man, I'm going through all these things. But one of the illustrations in this thing, oh, here it is. Whole Life 100. It's actually on page 73. It's the even distribution of age classes. They paid $2,000 a year for 21 years, right? 22 years. 22 years. So there's $44,000 in this thing, and then they decide to stop paying. But I'm gonna go back to year 20 real quick. In year 20, they paid $2,000, and between the ages of 19 and 20, this thing grew by $8,000. What year do you want that growth of $8,000 to grow after you pay your 2,000? What year do you want that to happen for you? I would like it to happen yesterday. So just what Nate said, the sooner you start, the quicker that happens. But in this particular example in the book, it was only leaving all of the money on deposit with the life insurance company. It had nothing to do with IBC. So if you utilize IBC, all of the numbers go higher.
And if you're in your 40s or 50s, because I was speaking to the younger generation earlier, if you're in your 40s and 50s, don't be discouraged because you can still create this environment for yourself and for your kids that are coming.
That's exactly. Yesterday, I'm on a conversation with a current member, and his wife joined. It's the first time I got to meet her in person, and we're having a conversation. And um, they have a large sum of money in a jailhouse. We'll call it a jailhouse. Okay, and
IRA or a mutual
yeah,
fund.
and they're asking me questions. I'm not telling them anything to do, and we make that very clear. This is you knowing why you've chosen this partner, and if you like the rules the partner set, and then what do you want to do about it, if you want to do anything about it. So they're telling me they really want to create some new flows of money, and they're a very close-knit family, a lot like how we all operate. Not everybody does. So my ears peek up, and I go, okay. And they're telling me all these things they're trying to figure out to create new income flows. And I said, do you like the idea of spending all of your energy going to learn something new that you're not sure how it's going to go? Or do you like the idea of keeping it all in house, creating the same flows of money with the people you already love and trust? They're like, well, what do you mean? I said, you got 3 teenage boys that are all about to be in their 20s. Do you think they're going to need a car, a house, a wedding, travel, kids' braces? They're like, well, absolutely. I said, there's your retirement plan right there.
Come on now.
Now, I said, now, if you want to go learn those other things, go ahead. That's great. But lock in the knowns right there with the things that matter to you the most. Teach them
Which is
about
your
contract,
family.
which is
Yeah,
your
that's
family.
exactly
Absolutely.
right.
Brandon, that reminds me. So, Mike, we were about 3 to 4 years in, and we had this epiphany one day, and it was thanks to a video that we saw from Todd Langford, who was talking about how banks make money. Banks don't make money by putting their own money at risk. They put your money at risk. And cost of capital, as opposed to what they can create in profit, is substantially different than what you realize. So if you put $10,000 down at the bank and they're going to pay you 5% interest to hold on to it, the same day somebody's going to call or walk in needing a $10,000 loan. Well, they just took in $10,000. So let's say they're going to pay me 5% interest and they're going to charge somebody else 10% interest. The average person says, oh, the bank made a 5% spread on their money. If bank made 5%, they wouldn't be in business. They would be bankrupt. That is 100% spread, because when you are using someone else's money to create value, the rate of return has a far greater impact. So the epiphany that Brandon and I had was, if all we ever do, forget every other investment out there, if all we ever did was became the bank for ourselves and our families, we would be better off than 95% of people just by that alone.
We have a 80-plus-year-old client that is financing mortgages and car loans for 2 generations under him. He had all of his money stuck in one of those jailhouses over here. He utilized it to completely capitalize a system, and now he's almost doubled his monthly income by becoming the bank for his family alone. Now, he was too old to buy life insurance, but he's got life insurance on 3 generations. Yeah, it's like 12 policies out of this family. And now a bunch of them are starting to get married. The great grandkids are starting to get married now. Phew.
That's a great point, because just because you think you're too old doesn't mean that you cannot own a policy and fund it and control the money.
That's right. That's right. Even though I will tell you that after COVID, insurance companies got a little weird about that for ownership and stuff like that. But, once again, it's a game. The insurance companies are playing the game. And, some of my company people get a little tightened up when I start saying that stuff. But it's true. It's true. It's a game. And really, the insurance company, in the great big scheme of things, do they care about you? They don't. They don't. So it's our job as IBC practitioners, as coaches, as mentors for our clients, our friends, our family, to be able to navigate that whole situation for them. And it's not hard, but it comes through the school of hard knocks. We've had to learn by failing, and we've had to learn by really digging in and learning about the whole scenario, that not only that banking happens, but how the insurance company functions as well.
Yeah, that brings up a great point of, it's not always that it's good or bad. It is just a player in the game, and you have to decide if you want to use it to benefit the things that matter to you the most, or be used by it.
that's that's
Well,
funny.
and we talk about this in our practice. There are essentially 4 basic rules of the financial institutions that they need us to follow in order for them to be profitable. They need our money, as we talked about earlier. Banks can't operate unless we give them money. They need it systematically.
Over time.
They need it for a long period of time, and they need to send it back to you on their terms.
Oh boy, isn't that the truth?
Well,
I
Mike,
always,
oh,
yeah.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add on. It's the amount of money, the time frame, and the interest rate. I'm just breaking it down even simpler than that. And what they want to do is control all 3 of those.
And what Nelson did such a good job in those 92 pages of really bringing to the forefront is that your behavior and your awareness of your behavior is by far the most important thing before you do
The
anything
most
else.
important. That's exactly right.
And we, no matter what walk of life we're in, it's really looking in the mirror and go, what is my behavior like in this situation? In my relationships, my friendships, my marriage, my business partnerships, can I be accountable, trusted, dependable? Will I show up? Will I be truthful when things don't go well? And so, Mike, you played a gigantic role. You continue to, Chris does as well. And even your team. We've gotten to be good friends with a lot of your team, with Crawford and Shelley and the Kwongs. It's just been such a blessing for us to come full circle. And, there's one thing that you have always told us. Chris at Bay actually tells us this, and this is a great thing to kind of sign off on. When you're seeking mentorship, there's ways to provide value by how you show up every day that will prove out if that's going to work well from the person looking to be mentored. But there comes a point to where, as Chris Bay said so well, he goes, guys, me and Mike are ready to kick you out of the nest when you're ready, because you're ready. You can always come back if you need to. But the only thing we ask is that any new ideas or new thoughts or new things you come across, you share it with us. And then it goes from just being mentor mentee to people working together for the same mission and really pouring into each other simultaneously. And what a beautiful relationship to be in any walk of life for anything. So
Yeah, doesn't matter what it is. That's right.
So, Mike,
There
we're
is no
grateful.
competition. There
Nope.
is no competition. That's something
No,
that
there's
Chris
not.
Pate told us early on, and really, because when we're in competition, that's scarcity minded. We love abundance, and abundance really revolves around collaboration, not competition. And so, as Brandon said, we're incredibly grateful for you guys. And where, if somebody wanted to connect with you or your team, where would be the best place for them to go?
LifeSuccessLegacy.com. LifeSuccessLegacy.com. All of our contact information is on there. Yeah, if they just wanted to have a conversation or want to visit, or hey, just jaw about something. I love it. I love it.
Mike, we love you, man. We appreciate you. And we'll definitely have to do this again.
You guys are a blessing. I appreciate you guys and what you have done for your crew down there as well. ULC, baby.
Well, you guys all know the algorithm. It likes it when you comment, even if it's a challenging comment. If you share it, you can find us on our webpage at cashflowlegendswithaz.com. And we hope this brought value to you today. We hope it spurred on questions about why you think the way you do, or do you need to consider rethinking how you think? And that's really our goal in all of our conversations. So until the next time, we'll catch you later.